Hi everyone, this is Hannah from Wonderful Woodlands, and I'm very excited to share with you. Today we are going to be making a very adorable snowman potholder. You can see this has a little pouch in it, so it's great for gifting. If you're looking for a cute holiday gift that you can whip up all by yourself, it's great because it's a pot holder, but it also doubles as a little gift bag for you. So this is suitable for complete beginners. It's a pretty easy pattern. So let's go ahead, we'll jump right in and get started. For today's project, I will be using aluminum single pointed needles in size 7. This white is from Lion Brand 24/7 cotton. My red is from Malabrigo Rios, which requires winding. So if you don't want to have to wind a ball of yarn, use Lion Brand 24/7 cotton is the same weight. Gauge on the pattern will come out the same. And then my black is also from Lion Brand 24/7 cotton. So I'll link to all of these in the description below. So you're going to take your white yarn here and we're going to make a slip knot. So fold it in half, cross the short end over the long end, and then grab the long end through the loop and pull it tight. There's your slip knot. This is going to go on one of your needles, doesn't matter which one. Pull it tight, not tight, but just so that it's a little bit snug on the needle. And then we are going to be doing a knit cast on. You're welcome to cast on any method you want to, but if you're newer to knitting, this pattern is fairly simple. So we're going to be doing a knit cast on method if you have never done this before. So you're going to take your second needle. It's going to go through the same loop that the first needle is going through. So both needles are going through the same loop of yarn right now. Don't worry about your short end. Take your longer end of yarn here. You're going to wrap it around the bottom needle, catch it on the other side, and then you're going to slide this loop back onto the first needle. And we're just going to keep doing this. Now you have two loops. We're going to go through the first one. So both needles going through the same loop. Wrap the yarn around, catch the stitch, and slide it onto the end. Let's do it again. Both needles going through the same loop, wrap the yarn around, catch the stitch, and slide it on. And you're just going to keep doing this until you have cast on 28 stitches. Okay, now before we move on, we want to count our stitches. This pattern does require an even number. So we're looking for 28 stitches before we start knitting. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28. Okay, now to get started on our pattern, this is a very simple pattern. It's a moss stitch. So it's going to be a knit 1, purl 1, and the order that we do our knits and purls in is going to change throughout the rows, which is going to create our texture. So for the first 2 rows, we're going to go knit 1, purl 1 all the way across. So for your knit stitch, it's exactly the same as the cast on stitch. We have both needles going through that first loop of yarn. You're going to wrap the yarn around, catch the stitch, and then this time you're just going to slide the stitch off the end of the needle instead of passing the loop on. So this is a knit stitch. Now you're going to take your yarn, you're going to bring it to the front for a purl stitch. So this time the needle is going to come through the loop toward you. Then you're going to take your yarn here, you're going to wrap it around the tip. You'll catch it on the back side this time and then slide your stitch off. So we're going to keep doing this. Bring the yarn to the back for your knit stitch. Wrap the yarn around, catch the loop on the front, slide it off, bring it to the front. Needle comes through from the front. Wrap the yarn around, catch the stitch on the back, slide it off. So just keep doing this until you get all the way to the other side. Okay, I'm getting down to my last couple of stitches here. I have 4 left, so I'm going to go knit and purl and knit. And then your last stitch should be a purl stitch. If it's a knit stitch, you're going to have to go back because you got off somewhere. Okay, now for our second row, we're going to do the exact same thing. So to start your second row, you're just going to take this needle with all the stitches on it, and you're going to flip it over. So this needle is now going to go in your left hand, and your empty needle is going to go over in your right hand. We're going to do the same thing all over again. So we're going to start with a knit stitch. Don't work off your short tail here, put that one out of the way. So you'll take your long tail, We'll start with a knit stitch, and then bring your yarn to the front, and a purl stitch, and a knit stitch, and a purl stitch. Go ahead and do this all the way across this row. Okay, now for row number 3, we're just going to flip-flop. So we're going to do the exact same 2 stitches, but we're going to do them in reverse order. So we're going to start with a purl stitch here. So your needle's going to come through the loop toward you. You're going to take your yarn, keep it in the front. You're going to wrap it around the needle, catch the loop on the back, and then slide that stitch off. Then we'll bring the yarn to the back for a knit stitch. So we're going purl, knit, purl, knit, and go ahead and do this all the way across the row. Okay, last 3 stitches here. Knit, and then purl, and then this row, this is row number 3, ends with a knit stitch. And then exactly the same thing for row number 4. We're going to flip this around. This goes back in the left hand, and then we're going to start this row with a purl stitch. So purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, knit 1. And that's it. So you're just going to keep repeating. I'm going to write this down for you now. Rows 1 and 2 are going to go knit 1, purl 1, and rows 3 and 4 are going to go purl 1, knit 1. And you're going to do this until your piece is 10 inches long. So I will see you back here in a little bit. Okay, your piece should now measure 10 inches from the cast on edge, so you can see we're in pretty good shape here. The next thing we're going to do is a color change. Okay, so for our first row with this new color, we're just going to knit all the way across. We're going to be moving into a garter stitch. So for the rest of this pattern, we're just going to be using a knit stitch. To do a color change here, you want to make a loop with your yarn. Just let the tail hang down here. And we're just going to pick up knitting with the red as if we were knitting with the white. You want to make sure, keep your white and your red tails close by here, because you want to just keep them a little bit snug so that the yarn doesn't pull out as you work. But the more stitches in you get, the less you'll have to worry about it. So we're just going to knit all the way across this row. So on your second row here, you're going to knit the first 14 stitches. We have 28 stitches in our pattern. And so when you get halfway through, you've knit 14 stitches, then our second 14 stitches, we're going to do a knit front back on. So we're going to double all of these stitches. So you're going to knit into the front, don't drop the stitch off, catch the loop on the back, and knit into the back. We're going to do this for every stitch the rest of this row. And this is going to give us enough stitches so that we have cute little tails for our scarf, our snowman scarf. Okay, as you get close to the end here, remember you have loose tails, and so these stitches, don't pull hard because these stitches are going to start getting a little bit looser. Just go really, really slow. And then on this last one here, this is going to be a little bit loose. So what we're going to do to clean up this edge here, pull this in so it's a little bit snug, and then take your red tail and your white tail and just make a single knot. And this is going to fasten them not too tight, but just snug. That's going to keep them from going anywhere as you keep working. Okay, so now for this next part, you're going to need a stitch holder. I have the advantage of having this needle size in a double pointed needle, so I'm going to use this as my stitch holder. If you don't have an extra needle to use as a stitch holder, you can grab a ballpoint pen because it's about the same size and this will work just fine to slide your needles onto. Or you can also just grab a yarn needle and some yarn and you can slide your needles onto the yarn. So what we're going to do, you're going to take your needle here that you're going to be using in a minute. This one's going to go in the back, and then your stitch holder, whatever you're using for a stitch holder, is going to go in the front. And we're going to slip these stitches alternately. So the first stitch is going to go onto the regular needle. And then the second stitch is going to go onto the stitch holder. And we're going to do this for 28 stitches. So we're going to go to the regular needle and then to the stitch holder. So this is 4, we're going to go for 28. 5, just alternating every other. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 13, 20, and then take your time, slide them down when you need to. If you keep the points of these two right in line with each other, it'll be easier. What did I say? 25, 26, 27, and 28. Okay, now the stitches on the front needle are just going to stay there. The stitches on the back needle are going to go back onto this left-hand needle. Take your time, go slow so you don't drop anything. Ooh, there we go. Okay, these first couple rows are going to be a little tight because you're not going to be using the stitches on this needle here. You're just going to leave these out of the way. We're going to keep working in a garter stitch on this back row here. So this first row or two, it's going to be a little tight because you do have these stitches kind of in the way. We're just going to make it work. Okay, so from here, we're just going to work a regular garter stitch. My yarn was cut, so I had to start with a new ball here. You should just be picking up with the piece that you had. I know this is a little tight, but it gets better in a row or two, so stick with me. We're just going to knit all the way across here. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, if you're using a scrap piece of yarn as a stitch holder, this is probably going to be a lot easier because the yarn moves. If you're using a pen or a knitting needle, that's okay if you can get through it, but if you're getting really frustrated, maybe think about moving your stitches onto a piece of yarn because it won't be so stiff, and so your work will flex and move with you. At this point, I didn't say it before, but you can trim your white yarn. You actually could have done this a few rows ago. Leave yourself a good 4 inches or so, so that you'll have enough to weave your tail in. And now we're just going to keep working off this back needle here in a garter stitch. So you're just going to knit every stitch, every row, and we're going to go until our scarf is about probably an inch long or so. So once your scarf is about an inch long, we'll meet back here and we'll look at how to do the tails for the scarf. Okay, once your scarf here measures about an inch, mine's about an inch and a quarter. You can go as long or as short as you want. Then we're going to bind off. So we're going to do this with a simple knit stitch again. So you're going to knit your first 2 stitches. And then you're going to take the first stitch and you're going to slip it over the second stitch. Knit another one. Take the first stitch, slip it over the second. Knit another one. And slip the stitch over. Go ahead and do this for all the stitches all the way across your row here. Okay, last couple stitches here. And then pull this loop real big. And then just go ahead and take your tail and pull it through the loop. That's going to hold the end of your work for you. Now we're going to go back. We're going to slip the first 7 stitches here back onto our needle. So we're not going to do all of them, we're just doing 7. One more. So we're going to leave these 7 for later, and we're going to keep working these 7 So take your end here with a loose tail, you're just going to loop it over the needle. And we're going to start working these in a garter stitch again, so just knit every stitch. Be careful you don't pull here because you don't want to pull your end out. And then we'll turn our work, and we're just going to keep going with that garter stitch until your scarf tails are as long as you want them. Be careful with these last two stitches. Remember, you have a loose end here, so be really, really gentle. Ooh, mine's a little big. And then we'll take it and we'll tighten it up as soon as you knit that stitch. All right, once your little scarf tail here measures about 2 inches, then it's time to bind off. We're going to do this exactly the same way that we bound off our top edge here. So we're just going to knit every stitch, and then you'll take the second stitch and pass it over the first stitch. Last one. And then you can trim your tail here. Just a few inches, we're going to be weaving this in. It doesn't have to be super, super long. And pull this through, and we'll come back to this in a little bit. Okay, I just got my next 7 stitches onto my, off of my stitch holder and onto my needle here. And we're gonna knit, you want your stitches to be going this way. So you want the white side of your work to be on the bottom if the pointy end of your needle is facing this way, and the not pointy end is over to the left here. So we're gonna start from here. We're gonna take the end of our yarn here, wrap the loop around the end, and we're just gonna start knitting, same as last time. And we're just going to keep working in garter stitch here, so knitting every stitch, every row, until this is about 2 inches long. And then you can bind off just like you did last time. Be careful when you come back to this stitch here, you don't want to pull the end out, so be nice and gentle with it, and then just tighten it up. So go ahead, keep knitting until your work is about 2 inches long. And then you can bind off just like you did last time, and then we'll meet back here and talk about how to weave in loose ends. Okay, now the next thing you're going to do here is weave all of your red tails in. Leave your white tails for now, we're going to come back to them. And when we, this is going to be our front side here, when we weave our tails in, I always like to do it on the back side if possible. We have our rule of 3s, so we're going to go 3 stitches in one direction, 3 stitches in another direction, and then 3 stitches in a third direction, and then after that you can go ahead and trim your tail. Go ahead, do this for all of your red yarn tails. Okay, now the next thing we're going to do here is seam our edge, and so to do this we want to measure out 3 lengths of our white yarn, because that's what we're going to use to make our seam. We're going to do this for each side. Once you have your first one, you can just measure off of the first piece of yarn. This will be plenty more than enough for us. Then we just need one of these to start with. We're going to do this from the inside here. I think I'm going to leave about 1 inch or so here at the top. I think that looks pretty good. So get your yarn needle and your white yarn. And then we're just going to start at the bottom here. Pull this almost all the way through. Leave yourself a little bit of a tail because we'll need to weave this in and then tie this in a knot so it doesn't pull through. There we go. And then we're just going to do, for this one, we're just going to do a really simple stitch here at the edge. So I just catch one loop from each side and pull the needle through. Very, very, very easy. So you're going to go all the way up to the top here, and then we're going to repeat that on the other side. On this red edge here, try to keep, you're going to have a little bit of a white seam going up, which is okay because it's going to be on the inside, so it won't really matter too much. But just try to keep your white yarn as close to the outside as you can, and that will kind of minimize the white that's showing through here. Great. And then on your last stitch here, you can feed your yarn through your loop here. So just take your tail, pull it through to give yourself a little bit of a knot. And then we will go ahead and weave this in. I would do on the back side here where you're not going to see it. And then you're going to go back and do the exact same thing on the other side. So same thing, pull it through, and you're just going to make a little bit of a knot down here. And then as you get up to where your tails are here, just make sure you're only going through the white yarn so you don't actually accidentally get your tail caught in your stitches here. Okay, then the very last thing you want to do is just take these little tails down here and weave these in. And then we'll come back and look at how to make your buttons for your snowman. Okay, now the next thing we're going to do is make some buttons. So the first thing we're going to do here is make a slip knot. This is with our black yarn. So make one twist, pull the short tail through the loop, and then you're going to take your first needle and slide it through the loop, pull it so it's snug but not tight. And then we're going to use our knit cast on method just like we did before. Okay, with your longer tail of yarn here, you're going to wrap the yarn around, catch the stitch, slide it back onto the needle. We're just doing 3 stitches here. Wrap the yarn around, catch the stitch, and slide it onto the needle. Okay, now for our first row, we're just going to knit. So we're going to knit 1, knit 2, and knit 3. Then we'll turn our work. And then this one, we're going to knit front and back. We're going to knit into the front, knit into the back. Then we're going to knit 1. Then we're going to knit into the front and knit into the back. Now we're going to knit 5. Knit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. One more time. Turn your work. Knit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Turn your work. This time we're going to knit 2 together. So your needle goes through the first 2 stitches, then you're going to knit 1, and then you're going to knit 2 together again. So both needles going through both stitches, wrap the yarn around, catch the stitch. Now we have 3 stitches left, and then we're going to bind off with our 3 stitches. Same as before. We're going to knit 2. Pass the first stitch over the second, and pass the first stitch over the second. And then you can cut your yarn, probably about this much of a tail is good. And then take your end and pull it through the loop. Okay, go ahead, make 2 buttons, and then we'll meet back here and we'll talk about how to attach them to your pot holder. Okay, now to get these little buttons attached here, get your yarn needle. We're going to use our 2 tails. And we're just going to bring the tails through. Right where we want them to sit. Okay, that looks good. And then we're going to do the same thing for the second one. Okay, once you're happy with where these are, we're going to flip this inside out. Be careful you don't pull these out. And we're going to tie each of these into a square knot. Be careful you don't want to pull them tight because that will cinch your pot holder on the front side. There we go. And then to weave in our ends, we don't want to weave the black in on the white because there's no way to hide the color. It's not going to look very good. So instead what we're going to do is we're going to go up and down a few times through the button. Oops, not through the scarf tail, just through the button. And that's actually going to also help to anchor the button in place. So I would do this probably 4 times or so per tail. And then you can tie 1 more knot to keep the ends in, and then we'll trim and just leave a little tail on the ends. Perfect. And then we'll trim these here. And that's it. This is your cute little snowman pot holder. Great job, everybody. If you liked today's video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you back next time for more festive holiday knits.